Welcome to part 4 of our live training session here with our FD RX7. In our last few videos, we've built the base file, we've gotten the engine fired up and running in our last video. Now we're ready to move into doing part throttle cruise area tuning. So essentially everything off idle and before we get into positive manifold pressure or boost pressure. So this is where we spend the majority of time of our driving. We need to make sure this is mapped out properly so we have good drivability out of our engine, repeatable air fuel. It's going to be making or breaking how the car drives. I'm going to show you the calibration techniques that I use with a Haltech Elite system so I can calibrate out my fuel table and my spark timing within this range of area of our driving. So we have a lot to cover. Let's jump into our live training session so we can get started. Welcome back to our live training session here with our FD RX7. In the last video, we got our engine fired up and running on our Haltech Elite box. We have the idle sorted out. We know that can shut the engine off, turn it back on. It'll hold an idle. That's the very first step in calibrating any kind of standalone system on any kind of engine. Now we're ready to move into the part throttle calibration process. It's actually relatively simple. We're going to go through how to do that in this video. We're also going to be taking a look at our fuel injection timing, just making sure that that's going to be correct for part throttle operation. Then we'll also move into acceleration enrichment and making sure that the acceleration enrichment is also going to be reasonable so that we don't have it too rich or too lean and we have good throttle response. We have to move in that order of operations and calibration. We can't do the acceleration enrichment until we've calibrated our main VE table here. This table represents steady state airflow coming into the engine. So we need to nail this down as we're having nice smooth throttle inputs. Then we can use something like the acceleration enrichment to go in and add fuel above and beyond what's calculating from our main table here. If we have our main table poorly tuned and we try to tune our acceleration enrichment, we might find that we have rich spots and lean spots that we're trying to cover up with the acceleration enrichment. We never find that we have proper fuel delivery. We might find it's always inconsistent. The air fuel's never consistent, and that's because the base table is not sorted out. So the base table here is super important to get nailed down, and that's what we're going to be focusing on in this video. So there's several other things I want to talk about here, just real quick so we can just refresh what we're going to be doing in the calibration process. So when we're taking a look at our table here, the VE table is an estimation of the airflow coming into the engine. If we have a MAF sensor, a mass airflow sensor, we can measure the actual airflow coming into the engine, but the VE table is a simulated or estimated amount of airflow. The higher the value means that we're flowing more airflow. The smaller the value means we're flowing less airflow. So by moving the value up or down, we scale out the injector pulse width to deliver more or less fuel. What we want to see is we have appropriate values in our table here, part throttle driving anywhere between 60 and 75. And then once we get to about 0 psi, that's atmospheric pressure, we want to see we're anywhere between 80 to 100%. So we're going to have to calibrate this table. We know at idle here, our values should be about 40 to 50. We see they're at 47 right now. That's completely fine. So we're going to just test essentially off idle driving here. So 2000 RPM and above, and essentially here from full vacuum of negative 23.6 inches of mercury and all the way up to 0 psi. So this is where we're going to be calibrating. Now, our job here, our goal, is to hit the target air fuel that we've placed into our target air fuel table. We've built the target air fuel table out in the previous video. We have target air fuels in our cruising range here around 14.5, and then as we get up here higher and higher in our engine RPM, we start to richen up the mixture a little bit. Rotaries tend to run a little bit richer than a piston engine, just for reference sake. Once we see we're here at 0 psi, we can see we start to richen up our target air fuel, and then we see as we get into boost here, we run the target air fuel much richer than we would with a piston engine. Rotaries like to run a little bit cooler. We have to keep track of what's going on with their EGTs. Now we are running meth injection, so that's going to be helping in boost, but part throttle, we need to be aware of what's going on. So our job, again, is to tune out and work with these values here in our table and dial them in so that we hit the target air fuel. Now we are running closed loop fuel correction. We worked with that a little bit in the last video when we were sorting out our idle fuel. We can pay attention to what that short-term fuel trim is doing here. This is taking a look at our target air fuel coming from our target air fuel table, represented right in this little box here. Then we have our wideband. That's our actual air fuel. It looks at the difference between the two, calculates a percentage of error, or the AFR error, air fuel error, and then it goes in and it applies whatever that percentage adjustment is based against the injector pulse width that's being calculated from our fuel table. So it's going in and constantly adjusting things. So we can watch what's going on with this short-term adjustment, if it's adding or subtracting at a particular range in our table, depending on where we're at here in the table. We can use that to guide us in our calibration process. So I'm going to be showing you how to use the closed loop tuning method here. You alternately have the Megalog viewer. Megalog viewer allows us to capture the data within our data logging here, allows us to export the data out into Megalog viewer, and we can create a histogram overlay, which is going to tell us how far we're off in the table by. That's another alternate way to go about calibrating this. Now, on my chassis dyno, I have a nice and controlled environment here. I can do this much quicker using my closed loop method, watching what my short term is showing me, and then making my changes and updating everything. I just find that a little bit quicker, so I make my changes and I blend the change. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.